Welcome to the Offshoot. I'm the host, Lee Sean Nelson. We're talking about rural America, where a great majority of Black Americans live and where Native Americans live. So I'll have a very special guest today. Her name is Toni Nelson-Graves. Full disclosure, she is my first cousin, so we grew up together, but she is highly qualified when it comes to talking about issues in small town rural America. Toni, welcome to the Offshoot.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on your show. I'm excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you as well. This is the conversation that I know that you, as a community leader, is already involved with, and I'm just basically scratching the surface and trying to hopefully help you spread the word, not just about what's going on in small town America, but also to spread the word about your talk show as well.
Okay, great.
So let's start this by asking the first question. Okay, so this podcast, this aggregate is all about how do we advocate for or examine making Black Americans and Native Americans a protected class of people. What does it mean? But when we have these discussions, whether it's the national media or international media, is always centered around cities, big metropolitan areas. So I want to talk about small town America and what's happening down there. So first, give me your definition of what it means to protect your family, what it means to protect your community, and then we'll go from there.
Well, that's a wonderful question because I was born and reared here right in South Carolina, rural South Carolina, as a matter of fact. So that is a lot to talk about when you're talking about rural America and specifically South Carolina and what it means to protect classes of people. And so that topic is very broad, but I can just start out by saying that being that I grew up in a rural community, I know how important it is to have a voice in rural areas.
Mhm.
And so now that I'm an adult, I see that it's even more so important to
Yes.
protect people of colors and other minorities as well. But specifically, I'm going to be talking about people of color because I have a talk show and my platform centers around how to make communities of color stronger and better. And so yes, it's something worthwhile investing in, talking about, so we can learn and grow in our efforts to improve those areas. And
So
so what it means to me to protect those individuals is mainly providing education.
okay,
Remaining engaged in those communities is key
very
because you
important.
cannot protect people if you're not involved. They're not going to listen to you. They're not going to want your protection, as a matter of fact, because they want to know that you understand where they're coming from.
And so what are some of the challenges that you're seeing in rural America when it comes to trying to protect the communities of color down there? I mean, what about the resources? Because you're not in a big city. The state itself, South Carolina, isn't a big state when it comes to resources, financially, that is.
Right.
So, and just to let everyone know, I'm in Washington, D.C., born and raised in the small town that my cousin Toni is talking about, but I've been away since age 18. But she's been there since she was born. So I want her to, but she has, again, like I said, this really interesting perspective because, again, she has a talk show where she talks about this. So, again, I'm sorry to interrupt there. So, yeah, tell me. So, what are the challenges that you're seeing when it comes to protecting the communities in rural America?
Yeah, there are challenges. And let me just say this, I'm a licensed social worker. And so I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in social work as well as in public administration. And so when you ask that question, I can truly speak from experience
Hmm.
that the resources in rural America is very scarce, especially when transportation has been a major issue in rural America. Even if there are resources available, sometimes families have difficulty getting to those resources.
Hmm.
And so we have to, talk about all those barriers that prevent people from thriving and having a better quality of life.
Yes.
However, one of the things that I'm proud to say is, as a person of color myself, we are phenomenal when it comes to make it do with what we have.
I agree 100%.
Making sure that we look out for one another. That's extremely important. But again, getting back to those resources, I think more can be done to help communities of color. And, it's important that we have, elected officials that understand the struggles of Black communities.
Well, let me stop
And if
you.
we don't-
I'm sorry to interrupt. Let me stop you there for a second, because this is interesting, because our hometown is unique in the sense that years ago, 2008, before he became president, Barack Obama stopped in our hometown and he visited one of the schools that,
Right.
that didn't have the resources that you talked about. Additionally, Ben Bernanke, the former Fed chair, is also from our hometown.
Right. Actually,
So,
his English teacher in high school was also my English teacher in high school, Bernanke. But yes, President Obama, he did come to Dillon and, visit our school, and he saw that there's a need. And thankful to a student at that time who was in the 8th grade, Tashion Bade, she wrote the president a letter. And she, she pleaded with him, do not forget about, rural America. And so he took the opportunity, and let me just back up. He took the opportunity to come and visit the school. And he didn't forget. He didn't forget about us. And he did, allocate $4 million to Dillon County schools to build the new middle school that is in existence today.
Again, and that's a story that most people have never heard of.
Right.
That's a very important story. I mean, that's information that people should know about, what it means to be politically connected and to hold our politicians accountable.
Exactly. And so getting back to, politicians, lots of times, I try to educate the community about how important it is to understand the platform of those that are seeking our vote, and not just give them our vote. They have to earn it. And so we have to talk about their platform and what they're proposing to do to help communities. And, take it serious and understand that their vote matters. Your vote is your voice. And I think far too often it's unfortunate that, that people don't understand how important their vote is.
That's very true. And unfortunately, I think that's across the country when it comes to our community, or I should say communities of color in general, where we don't see a large turnout for off-season elections, if you will. This is an off year for politics, off year for elections.
Right.
And so how many folks are going to turn out to vote for their local congressman, their mayor? You're very, very correct. Those things are very, very important. I'm getting involved myself. I'm running for commissioner here in Washington, D.C. because I think
Okay, great, awesome. I wish you much success. You'll make a great commissioner.
I need the vote. So, but again, I want to talk about, again, protecting the Black community, protecting people of color in rural America. And the resources that you got from President Obama, that's great, but he's out of office. And we're seeing a wealth gap between urban areas and rural America. Now, we do have the current president who has an infrastructure bill that wants to bring high-speed internet service to rural America and other kind of telecommunication services and infrastructure. But we also have crime in small towns as well. That might be per capita equal to what we have in cities like Washington, D.C.
Right.
But again, you don't have the resources. So you said earlier that people of color, particularly Black people, we're very, very good at making do with what we have. Okay, but is that going to last? Is that really going to cut it?
Absolutely not. We have to invest in job security here. And, we're here in Dillon, South Carolina. I don't think we mentioned that, but I think it's important to let the viewers know that we're in Dillon, South Carolina, and you can Google Dillon, South Carolina. I think that, we should be further along than we are now, being that I-95 come right through Dillon County. We are 30 miles from I-20. We're midway between New York City and Miami, and so we have to take advantage of those opportunities and getting businesses and industries into the area. But one of the things that have hindered us is appointed school boards. And so it's kind of difficult to protect communities when you have so many obstacles out there that's trying to hurt communities of color. And so I think that
I'm sorry, are those institutions that are hurting the community?
I say mainly it's individuals that's trying to keep a hold on Dillon County thriving. And I know that sounds, like who would want to prevent a county from thriving, but you would be surprised at politicians who don't want businesses to come here, who don't want high paying jobs in the area, um, who don't want good jobs to come here because it could possibly expose a lot of things that are going on here in the county that they don't want to be exposed.
They say all politics is local, and that definitely sounds like local politics.
It is local politics at its finest, and it's time for the people to stand up and make decisions that's going to be best for their children and their grandchildren. I fight for these type of things every day. This is the burden that I have to improve those communities. My 3 children, they're all in college, but that's not good enough for me. It's important that all children have the opportunity to thrive.
And it's also it's rare. I mean, even in cities like Washington, D.C., where you have a couple that has 3 children, the odds of all 3 going to college in the Black community, that's still very, very rare. You're lucky if you have one of the 3 to go to college, but in your case, you have all 3 to go to college.
Yes, absolutely. But that's not good enough for me. Like I was saying, it's not good enough. I want to see all children. College is not for everyone, but at least provide the option for them, give them a fighting chance. And so we must continue to fight until everybody has the opportunity to live out the American dream.
Yes. So rural America, like I said, a lot of folks live in small towns. And as far as the Black community, about 7.8% of the Black community lives in rural America. And people should know that the Black population is less than 13% of the US total population. Now, when it comes to Native Americans, most Native Americans live in rural America. Only about 4% of Native Americans live in urban areas. That is small. So the people who, in my opinion, are most vulnerable when it comes to institutions, like you said, or individuals who want to hold back our communities, okay, we need to raise our voices, I think, starting in the small communities, because where we still have a large population.
You're exactly right. At our local high school, 77% of the population is minority students. And so we have to invest in all children. When I talk about communities of color, that doesn't mean that other communities are not equally as important, because that would be far from the truth. Everyone is important, but I focus on communities of color because we're the ones that are struggling at the present time. And getting back to protecting, our community, I feel the best way to protect communities is invested in our youth. Why? Because they are our future. So we have to protect, we have to invest in our youth. We have to provide them quality education. We have to support Black-owned businesses and keep the dollar within our community longer than 4 hours.
Yes.
And so that's how we protect the Black community.
I think that is very well said. And I think that's something that could be applied not just to small towns, but also to urban areas like Washington, D.C., New York, Houston, other cities where you have large Black populations. So I think that you're 100% correct on that. But still, with that being said, our communities don't have the capital, the political connections to bring all those things into fruition. And so we talked earlier about Obama, who was able to keep his promise to Dillon, South Carolina. Like I said, we also had Ben Bernanke, who was a well-known Fed chair, who lives here in Washington, D.C., but I'm not sure what he's doing or what he has done in the past to support the county. But let's talk about protecting from who or whom or what. Okay, can we get more specific, more granular about who we need to be protected from? Or can you answer that question, or is that a question that is probably too broad?
Who we need to be protecting communities of color from?
Yes.
Well, you know,
And I'm
we
going
need to,
somewhere specifically with this.
okay. We need to protect communities of color from those that prey on those individuals who are vulnerable.
Hmm.
You know, for example, we're in the process of, we're going to have an election coming up June 14th. And, you know, there are individuals out there that are already harvesting, you know, ballots, you know, going to, you know, the elderly population, the disabled, and getting access to their absentee ballot. And so that is just so unfortunate. And so we have to ensure that our grandparents, our loved ones
Hmm.
who may not quite understand the process, we have to educate them and not allow individuals to come around when it's election time and offer them a fish plate or something like that for in exchange for their votes.
Yes.
You've heard the saying, the more things change, the more they stay the same. And so I see that here in this community where, you know, there's a mentality that, you know, if we can just get the Black vote, then, you know, get them to see things our way, then we can remain in control. And that's not to say that, you know, Black should be in control. That's not. I feel that the most qualified person should be in control, rather they Black, white, Republican, or Democrat. It doesn't matter to me. We want people that want what's best for our community in office, making those decisions and being our voice.
And that is a great segue because this is where I was going with that question. Because you mentioned control, but I was trying to get to about who has the power. Because even if, say, the Black population, people of color, Native Americans, Latino Americans, and Dillon, yes, does have Latinos living in the county. But if those communities of color do grow in some way, but don't have the power, isn't that all kind of mute? To your point, isn't power what's
Yes.
really needed?
Yes. So are you
And
asking
who
specific?
has the power in Dillon
Well,
County?
if I have to say who's mainly controlling Dillon County, it goes to one individual, um, Representative Jackie Hayes, House seat number 55, and he's up for re-election now. He's like I said, he's the representative for this county, and he's also works for our school district, and he was the former athletic director, head coach, which he just passed on that position to his son, who is now the
Which
athletic
is
director.
which is nepotism and which is technically
Nepotism,
illegal.
and you know, and his wife, she has a high paying position within the school district as well. And so I really feel that his role in both positions pose a conflict of interest. But he has the authority right now to change the way our school boards are set up,
Mhm.
right? You know, 12 years ago, 90 and overwhelming 90% of the population, you know, passed a referendum for an elected school board. That was in 2010. Here it is 12 years later, and he refused to do the will of the people. 90% overwhelmingly voted for this. And he is the sole person that is holding it up. It has to be introduced by our delegation. And he's the only member of our delegation that resides here in the county, but he refused to do so.
And of course, we're not going to tell people what his ethnicity is, but we let them assume what his ethnic background is. But it is playing a part in terms of he's keeping the community back. He's preventing growth. He's basically hindering you from doing more at protecting communities of color in your town.
Yes, absolutely. And I don't believe that the community of color would need as much protection if they're given the opportunity to have a voice. For example, I served on that school board, the Dillon County Board of Education, for 7 years, which I was appointed. And the things that I saw going on at the school board, you know, raised all kinds of red flags. And once I began to speak out about those things and say, hey, this is not right. This is not, you know, advancing advancing people at all. Our kids are, leaving high school unprepared for college. And so I feel that there's a school to prison pipeline that's also factored into the way our school system is ran. And so
and that's historic. I mean, because we know about the 13th Amendment, and that was all about basically keeping men, particularly Black men, away from their families by putting them on the chain gang to make up for the lost labor from slavery. So, yeah, this is historic, and people need to know these things. And you're right. I'm sorry to interrupt, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Continue.
And so, like now, currently, there are no parents for school-age children serving on our school boards.
Wow.
None of school-age children, at least to the last time I checked. When I was on the school board, I was the youngest, and I was the only parent with school-age children. And so we had people in their 70s serving on the school board. I remember one gentleman, he would get lost coming to the school board meeting. And when he would arrive, he would fall asleep. We had an individual on the school board that was in the nursing home. In the nursing home.
That's really disturbing.
It is very disturbing. And they have prevented this information. It's like every time I try to get the information in the hands of the right people, they would do things to try to prevent it from happening. And so it's very disturbing. And they would try to destroy your character, to have people thinking that you're mentally insane. And, it sounds like something that is made up and far-fetched, but I'm far from being mentally insane. I know exactly what's going on in the school district. So yeah, we have to do something about this. And I feel that it's going to take someone outside of the state of South Carolina to get their hands on this and to, expose what is going on.
I hope that this is the first step, not that this platform, this channel, it has that kind of reach, but I do want to continue this conversation, have more conversations so that we can expose what's going on in rural America, because again, that's where I come from, that's where you live, and people can't forget that that is the heart of America, is rural America, where communities are, in my opinion, where they're tighter, where the families are tighter, and where they can really have an influence on the rest of the country and eventually the rest of the world, meaning that we'll get that, I don't want to say utopia, but we'll have a better life for everyone. But I do believe that we have to start with, I strongly believe we have to start with the Black community, Native American community, and other communities of color first, and take that power.
Exactly. And, I wish there were more people speaking up, but I mean, there's scare tactics out there that they use to kind of silence people. But I'm so thankful for your platform. Congratulations on, what you're doing and trying to get the word out in rural America to make things better for everyone. Is much needed. And I commend you for that. And I'm super excited about, where you're going to go with this program.
Thank you so much. And we'll talk more about that. And I know I will see you in next month. But before we head off, can you tell people where they can find you online or where they can catch your talk show?
Well, yeah, you can go to Let's Talk About It, Community Talk Show, and click like, and then you can follow my shows. I usually do an episode twice a month. During the months of September to May, I take a 3-month break. We have an annual celebration in June where we, give out community awards to individuals that are devoted to making our community stronger, safer, and a more desirable place to be.
Well, thank you so much. I'll make sure that gets posted with this video. Audience, thank you again for listening to this episode of the Offshoot. Be sure to go to YouTube and subscribe to the channel and like the channel. Also, check us out on Twitter. Follow me there. And you can also check out the website, which is at www.theoffshoot.org. Toni, thank you again, and I'll talk to you again very soon.
You're quite welcome.